Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're having a good day. I am here with a special guest today. You know, my channel is all about sharing and giving you guys the information, and most of you always ask me different questions about different disciplines, and I can't give you the answers because I only study chemical engineering. But I'm here with Angela today, and she's going to be giving us some insight into another field of engineering, and I hope you guys enjoy this.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Vanessa. I'm really excited.
I'm excited too. She's my first visitor on my channel, and I'm very, very happy that she decided to do this, so thank you very much.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, so we're going to dive into the questions immediately. I asked you guys for the different questions you would like to have answered if someone was to come on the channel for different fields of engineering, and I compiled them, so she's going to give us her take on the questions that you guys sent me. So can you give me a brief info into your background, your education, and your work experience?
I am a mechanical engineer. That was my discipline in school. I've worked in the nuclear sector for 12 years. Oh my god, that seems like a really, really long time.
That's impressive.
Oh, thank you very much. Right now I'm working on specializing in non-destructive examination at my job, and I work for SNC Lavalin. So we started off as Atomic Energy of Canada, and then we transitioned into privatization under SNC Lavalin. So 12 years.
That's impressive. So where did you study? Where did you go to? Where did you go?
I went to, at the time it was called University of Western Ontario. It's known as Western right now. That's in London, Ontario. And I actually didn't start off in engineering. I kind of was led into engineering. So
wow.
Yes.
That's interesting. Because most people they go and they do other things, and then they decide that they can do engineering, or they feel like they're more confident to do engineering, and then they transition. Because I have a lot of questions about people who went to college first and then they transitioned to engineering, or they were doing something different and they're like, I could do engineering, so they went into engineering eventually. So that's interesting. Second question, how did you hear about this discipline, and had you met someone in it prior to deciding to do this?
Yes, I did. I was in my first year of university, and I was at Saugeen Maitland Hall, which is like a really notorious residence in Canadian residences at universities. And my neighbor at residence was actually a first year mechanical engineering student, Razak. And all I knew about engineering at the time was that they had a general first year. So everybody did the first year, and they told me that was to weed people out. I knew that they had a tremendous amount of class hours that nobody else on campus seemed to be able to manage. And I knew that they wore these weird looking jackets. So that was all my exposure to engineering at the time. That was it. That's all I knew.
No family member?
No family member I had. I knew no one in engineering.
Wow.
So he introduced me to his group of friends, including Rajon, who was from the Caribbean at the time. So that's how I was introduced to engineering.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. That shows that you don't necessarily need to. You can discover it yourself and actually dive into it and explore and then see if you want to do it. So what inspired you to pursue this degree? I know this is kind of in tune with you meeting Razak.
Yes. So I have to give you the backstory then. I entered Western with the hopes of going into medical school. I was a very strong student, and I figured, okay, well, if I do a science degree, I can go into medical school. And I specialized in biophysics. So by year 2, I had specialized into biophysics. And after my first year of biophysics, I began to feel discouraged, because when you talk to people, you kind of try and get an idea of what everybody else is doing. And it seemed like everybody in science was trying to get into med school.
Really?
Yes, it just seemed like, oh, well, this person knows this person on the application committee, and this person knows this person on the interview process, and who did I know? My parents didn't know anybody. I didn't have any networks or any connections, and the goal began to feel unattainable to me, despite the fact that I had very good grades in first year. Like, I was on the dean's honors list, and my grades weren't as good in that first semester. So that made me feel discouraged. And also, I know you need to have a lot of extracurriculars to get into medical school. And I figured I couldn't do both. Try and get the good grades and try and do the extracurriculars. So it just made me feel discouraged. So by that second semester, I started looking at alternative career paths. And as I said, I had this group of friends that was already in engineering. So I figured I should switch into this program.
Yeah.
I can do it. I'm strong at math and I'm strong at science. And I also looked at where I wanted my life to go. I wanted to have a family. I knew I wanted to have a family, and I figured with engineering, it's a 4-year degree, it's a professional degree, and then after 4 years of working, you get your Eng, you're a professional, you have a title, and that was appealing to me at the time. So against my mother's advice, I switched into mechanical engineering, and I wasn't too sure which discipline to go into.
That's usually the dilemma.
Exactly, and most of my friends went into mechanical engineering. I looked at the courses and I said, okay, this looks interesting, and that was that. That's how I made the decision.
And now you're a professional engineer.
And it's interesting because I, of that group of people, am the only one still practicing. So it is very interesting, and I think I made the right choice. Looking back,
yeah.
I can't necessarily say I made the right discipline choice because I'm still a little bit on the fence when it comes to that.
You see other disciplines and you see yourself
right.
there too.
That's right, but I'm really glad that I obtained my engineering degree.
That's great. And in Canada, it's the engineering body here. It's very supportive, and they also want you to advance, and they have the whole professional engineering thing that really helps you to establish yourself as an engineer once you graduate. So that's really good. So can you briefly, for the people who are actually trying to study mechanical engineering right now, or they're actually thinking of the program, can you briefly explain what this degree entails? Just like an overview of what they might expect.
That's a very, very good question. I would say of what you learn, like in school, you don't really use much of it when you're in the working world. I think what the engineering degree or any engineering degree is meant to teach you is problem solving skills and how to collaborate and how to be a leader, actually. I think those things are the real fundamental skills that you learn. And we kind of learned those skills in relation to mechanical engineering or mechanical systems, you could say. So I'm not too sure. I can't speak on what other engineering disciplines are all about.
Yeah.
But another thing that I find interesting about mechanical engineering is that for each course that I took in university, I could have potentially made an entire life career out of some of those very narrow subcategories of mechanical engineering. And I don't know if other mechanical engineering disciplines are like mechanical in that regard. So those are some interesting things.
So there are some courses you took while studying mechanical engineering that you felt were very interesting and you wish you had the opportunity to actually specialize or like learn more about it.
I do have, I could talk on that more. I can talk on that more later.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what industries can you find a mechanical engineer, or what processes require them?
As far as industries are concerned, here in Ontario, manufacturing is very, very big. So the manufacturing sector, like automotive. Another one is construction. That's big here. So you would need engineers that have skills in HVAC, heating, cooling, ventilation, air conditioning, those types of skills. There's also some R&D here in Ontario, not that much, but at my job we have whole teams of engineers that look at research and development. So they're looking at safety system design, they're looking at stress analysis, they're looking at piping analysis, they're looking at how all of that relates to the codes and standards. So it's really, really big. So that industry is nuclear, but there's also oil and gas where you can find mechanical engineers. You could also find mechanical engineers in maintenance.
Maintenance, okay.
But that's not really an industry, that's building system maintenance within any building that you work, right? That type
That's
of
true,
maintenance.
because almost any company would need some type of maintenance.
Exactly.
And that's where mechanical engineers can come in.
I've seen jobs posted at hospitals around here for mechanical engineers who are involved in maintaining the systems, building systems, right? So it's very, very broad, mechanical engineering. Very, very broad.
That's good to know. That's good.
Another area would be control systems, robotics, right? It's kind of manufacturing industry related, but it has reaches in a lot of different industries. And also mining is another big one up north in northern Ontario.
They will need mechanical engineers too.
Yep.
So there's a lot of industries that mechanical engineers can work in.
The other thing that's interesting about mechanical engineering, and sometimes I think about it in relation to the projects that we do at work. It seems like the mechanical engineers tend to rise through the ranks more so than other engineers. I don't know if that's true of other workplaces.
I feel that way about mechanical engineering too. I feel like it's that engineering discipline where you always feel their presence. You feel the presence of mechanical engineers in any company or in any industry. There's always a need for them regardless. That's how I feel about mechanical engineering.
I would say that stems from how a project is structured. Like if you're trying to build anything or make anything, I'll give you an example. I'm on a project where we've developed a tool to inspect the channels that hold all of the nuclear fuel in these reactors that we have to inspect and maintain. And the first part of the design is having the mechanical system in place.
Okay.
And then from that, we can run all of our electrical, we can select our sensors, and then from that, we get the software person in to code everything and automate everything. So you need that mechanical structure there first, and then everybody else comes in to play obviously important roles, but the mechanics has to be worked out at the
base
forefront,
level.
at the base level. And I think that's why the mechanical engineer kind of seems to be the most important role.
And also in the plain sense of engineering, I feel like when most people who are not studying engineering or who are not engineers, when they hear of engineering, they think of systems, they think of the things that mechanical engineers do. They think of that as like the base level of what engineering is, until you start to inform them that there's aerospace too, there's biomedical, there's chemical, there's other disciplines. But when you talk about engineering, that's the first thing that pops up to their head, like, oh, what mechanical engineers actually do. So I think that's also why, because of how society views engineering, like, with mechanical engineering.
I think society on a whole is not really informed about what engineers actually do. They don't really interact with engineers in the way that they would a lawyer or a doctor.
That's true.
Right? It's just how it is. We're kind of in the background.
I agree.
We're kind of in the background, so
there needs to be more exposure so people can actually understand what is going on. So, what subjects would you say are sort of the core fundamentals of this discipline?
Yes, I have given that question some thought. The dreaded course in our mechanical engineering program was dynamics. A lot of people failed that course.
Was it just dynamics? Because I know there's fluid and then there's different ones.
There's more. I think another important class for mechanical engineers is mechanics, like understanding stress and strain mechanics, and then materials, like understanding how to select materials. That was another good class. Another one that I didn't really grasp was my electrical class. There was a course designed for mechanical engineers and how we interface with the electrical systems. So it was basically electronics for mechanical engineers. That was an important class, and I wish I had a better grasp of it. I do now, but then I don't think I did at the time. So that is another important class. And also, as you mentioned, fluid mechanics, thermodynamics, and heat transfer. Yes, heat transfer. And also, now where we are with our technology, I would say mechatronics. It was just a new kind of discipline.
Mechatronics, I don't hear about that much.
It's a amalgamation of mechanical, electrical, and computer science. And I did a course in mechatronics. There was no degree at the time. There was no program, and there are programs now at other universities across Canada. But at the time, there was no mechatronics course, and I really enjoyed that course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that course.
Good
I
one.
enjoyed my computer science course too. We had to take a first year or second year computer science course.
See, I'm not great with computers, so I don't even interact with that area. But that's interesting how they've merged it now. You have more opportunities to actually also add some other skills onto the degree. That's good.
Yeah,
That's good. They're advancing. Okay, so this is another question that I think you've kind of answered. Is there another engineering discipline you were interested in?
Yes, there was a couple. So after taking the computer science course, I was on the fence about doing a concurrent degree. They offered a mechanical and computer science concurrent degree at the time, and I wasn't too sure if I should take it. I really enjoyed computer science. Looking back, it would have been a good fit for me had I had done or gone that route, because I still actually program in my free time when I have a chance. So yes, I do. Wow. I have been. I don't have time to now, but when I was really discouraged in my career, I had started teaching myself HTML, CSS, looking at JavaScript. You can learn all that stuff online.
That's impressive. No, I know you can learn it online. That's impressive. It's about whether you like to learn it. Because I've told you before. I think they know also that programming was one of the worst courses.
It's not for everyone.
I took in university. I did not like it. I had no prior exposure. Like I had never been exposed to programming, so that was my first time, and also the stress of engineering, like first year engineering.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, this is horrible. It's horrifying. It's like a new language on its own, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's like a new language.
It's like you either love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
With programming, right?
No, that's understandable. Okay, so computer and any other one?
Electrical. For sure, electrical.
Okay, so what misconception is mostly associated with this degree? Like subjects, jobs?
I think the main misconception is that we're auto mechanics or that we're driving a train somewhere or something like that.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, it all has to do with mechanics, like I'm a mechanic or something.
Oh.
People just don't know.
Yeah, okay, that one I've heard. Most people just thinking like, oh, you're a mechanic, come fix this, you know.
That's right.
But it's actually like mechanical engineering. It's the engineering work behind it. That's interesting. Any other misconceptions?
I was reading online because I was like, what do people really think about engineers? And they're saying that we all love math. Apparently that's not true, but I love math, so.
I love math too, but I've learned that it's not true. I've learned that it's not true at all. Because I know people who've come into the program and they struggled with math. They loved everything else, but they struggled with math. And then they had to keep on pushing and pulling and pushing and pulling. And in some cases, they actually broke through and they were able to establish themselves and actually get to a point where they understood what they were doing with the math. And then for some people, the math actually drove them away eventually. Really? So yeah, it's a hit or miss. Not everyone loves math. That's what I realized. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Any other misconception with the subjects, especially? Is there a misconception of what people think you have being taught to you in school?
I think generally people just don't know what we're running off to spend 40 hours a week studying. They just have no idea. It's just not, like there's no real, like there's limited interaction with us and the public. We're working in companies, we're making decisions that affect large corporations in a lot of cases. So that really doesn't necessarily touch people, right? That's true. So I think that in and of itself makes engineering a bit of a mystery in a way. Yeah. It seems.
It is. I totally agree. So did you ever feel discouraged about pursuing this degree at some point?
So again, I have to give you the backstory. Because I've read that it's important to be authentic with your storytelling. So I have to give you the backstory. So I started my career at Atomic Energy of Canada at the time in 2005. And I figured that in order for me to advance, I would need to keep progressing in my education. And my company at the time was willing to pay for more education. So I ended up doing a graduate level diploma in nuclear technology. through McMaster. Yes.
You've touched a lot of engineering disciplines. Nuclear, she loves computers.
Yeah, so I did additional study on my own time. They paid for it, of course, and I completed this graduate level diploma. And I think I had the immigrant mentality, just work really hard and you will advance. But it doesn't work that way in the working world. And right when I was finishing that graduate level diploma, the company was talking about privatizing. So the government was going to sell us to SNC-Lavalin. And of course, people were scared what's going to happen with their jobs. And I figured, well, I have this education, so I have an edge.
Yeah.
And I'm single, so I can go to site and get more experience to further develop myself. So that's what I did. I picked up myself and I went to site. I went to Point Lepreau nuclear generating station. So they have an office in New Brunswick.
Wow.
I was working there for 8 months. Yeah, I was there for 8 months. And then I went to South Korea. We had a project there refurbishing a reactor out there. So I was there for 13 months.
13 months.
Yes, and I figured that all of that site experience would help advance my career.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's not what ended up happening.
Oh.
When I got to Korea, I was given a whole bunch of administrative work to do. And it wasn't just me, it didn't just happen to me. There was another woman working on my project, and I remember turning to her and her looking at me and her saying, "Oh, they're doing this to us because we're women." And eventually I had to stand up and say, I don't want to do this type of work anymore.
Yeah.
And that experience left me with a very bad taste in my mouth. I felt like I wasn't learning. I felt marginalized, actually. And it made me really question, why did I go through all of this when I wasn't even advancing?
Yeah.
And if I was doing that kind of work, there was no way I was advancing, right? So I came home, I switched departments into a more supportive group, and I'm still in that group till this day. But looking back and feeling that level of marginalization, I realized it wasn't necessarily the people and the organization who were doing it to me. It was the way the company was structured and the way that we had to do our work.
Okay.
Companies need to be intentional about mentorship. And if there was no formal mentorship program, then how would people know that they should be mentoring Angela?
So true.
Do you see what I'm saying?
That's so true.
So I began to realize that it's up to me to do what I need to do to advance myself in the organization. And how do you advance yourself within an organization? You need to network. You really do. You need to be intentional about where you want your career path to go.
I always speak about networking, guys.
It's extremely important. And after I got back from, so I came home, got married, had a baby, and went back to work, and then I started to do that networking. I started to ask people, what do I need to do to advance? And then one person told me, you can't be a generalist. You have to specialize within this company. So how was I gonna go about that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was my first piece of advice into navigating where
After
I am.
networking, you finally got...
That's right. I started to talk to my resource manager about what I should be doing to advance myself. I started to talk to my project manager about what I should be doing to advance myself. And I always maintained a positive attitude despite whatever happened to me in the past. And people saw that I was willing to learn, and I was always put on good projects that allowed me to learn.
That's awesome.
Now I have an opportunity where I can actually specialize in something. So I'm in non-destructive examination in my company, and it's been amazing. Like, I learn something new every day, and I'm still doing technical work at this age. So this is how I've managed to last so long. And I'm not sure if I want to eventually go into management. My kids are still young, so I think about them as well. But it's definitely, I'm in a company where I feel like management was never unattainable for me being a woman or me being a minority. I've seen other minorities rise up through the ranks. So
that's very comforting to know, at least.
There are companies out there that are like that. Maybe we're few and far between. Maybe it's a remnant of us being an ex-crown corporation, ex-government. But it's a very good work environment when it comes to
That's
diversity and inclusion and seeing minorities and immigrants rise up through the ranks. Like my project manager is an immigrant. My resource manager is an immigrant. So it's like,
that's the joy of Canada.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's amazing.
It's very comforting to know that that's the atmosphere there. That's really good. What advice would you give someone who is now interested in pursuing this degree?
2 pieces of advice. The first, you've already touched on it. It's important to network.
Yeah.
It really, really is important to network. But not networking from the perspective of getting. It's networking from the perspective of giving. That's the other part of my advice. Find something to give back to.
Yeah.
From a young age, you should be doing that. And you never know who you will end up meeting, who could help guide your career, who could help answer your questions. You can network with me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm under Angella Smith.
Check her out, guys. She's amazing.
I'm open and willing to answer questions, and I wish that I had someone like me willing to share their information. I didn't know that there were other Black engineers out there.
I agree.
I had no idea.
It's the same way we met. We met through networking. I met her networking at some event, and then I saw her. She's also on the panel. We're on this panel for
Her
Revolution. It's Canadian Women in STEM, and then I met her there, and since then we've kept in touch. And I think it's been amazing since then. She's such an amazing person. She's an inspiring woman, and I would have never met her if I didn't network. So that's the importance of networking, guys.
It's very, very, very true. Thank you so much for having me. It's amazing.
I'm so happy you were able to make it.
I'm glad to share my story. Really, really.
I'm sure everyone will be happy with this information too. And yeah, they'll probably be very happy because they've been asking all these questions. I'm sure you guys are happy now. So that's good. No, thank you so much.
Thank you.